Good day, podcast community. We have a special guest on our show today. Man, it's a Saturday too. I mean, Saturday morning? What the crazy? Who would do this on a Saturday morning? Only somebody that cares. Somebody that wants to kind of give you an idea of the value of a 50th reunion and just we'll have a conversation with a few questions. So Andy, tell our viewers who you are, maybe what you do now, and I always say who you serve, but you can make whatever up you want.
So I'm Andy Brower, class of 75 from Benedictine High School, living in Richmond. I am retired now. My wife and I both retired. Gosh, it's hard to believe, almost 3 years ago. So now we do traveling. We love to do a lot of hiking. Pete, I don't know if you know, Peggy and I hiked the Appalachian Trail together.
Ooh,
That was the whole thing. That was the first thing we did after we retired. Well, first thing we did was sit around on our butts for 3 months and then said, we got to do something. And so we went out and did that. So we've taken up hiking. We've hiked in Europe. We've hiked in, in different parts of the US. So that's what our kind of deal is now. But for me being here, I actually grew up in Richmond, left after high school, and then came back 30 years later. And now I'm living in the house I grew up in, renovated by one of my classmates, my high school classmates.
Dang, that is so good. So I want to ask, before we get into some of the questions, I want to ask, because, having, I lived in a 55 and older, and I didn't realize it, but it was 80 and older. It was an older, and didn't know it until I did. So I saw people towards the end of their life, and I did see a lot of people, as you know, are retiring right now. And what I saw was, when you retire or when you lack purpose, we decline, and we actually die within 2 years of retirement, because we don't have purpose in our life. We lack what you just said about hiking, about doing things. So when you retired, okay, take us through your mindsets. Like, we retired, we're slowing down. So what made, after 3 months, you to say, all right, we're gonna do some hiking? What was that mindset like?
Well, first, let me just go back to the decision to retire. So I was a school teacher, and I had a principal for years who said, don't ever retire when you have a bad year. So I had one of my most awesome classes ever, and I was already 66. So I said, I'm just going to retire. So Peggy and I did. And we had jobs to do around the house, but we have a house in the Shenandoah Valley, as well as our house in Richmond, and it's right near Shenandoah National Park. So we started doing some day hikes, and Peggy had never hiked. I was in the Boy Scouts, and I did a lot of hiking. And we passed people that were hiking the Appalachian Trail, because we hiked on little bits and pieces. The trail goes right through Shenandoah National Park. Mm-hmm. And she was like, that looks pretty cool. And I think it's something that I might want to try. So we started doing that from our house. We would use our house as a home base. We're going to go hike a couple days, come back home, hike a couple days, come back home. Pretty soon we had hiked the whole section of the national park, and Peggy said, I think we can figure out a way to do this. And so that's and that gave us a purpose. And then as soon as we finished that took us about a year. We came home every now and then. Then we're like, there's got to be other cool places to go hiking. Mm-hmm. And so let's do that. Now we still have our kids. Our kids are relatively young. Our daughter's in the Navy. Our son was just finishing college when we were doing that. So we had them as well to focus on. But that's sort of how it started. It was really just kind of, we're sitting around doing nothing, and that's not good. And now it's something that we think we can do,
So with Peggy being not a hiker, so what did she say to you? Like, you're going on something new, you haven't done it, and she does that first year, she obviously is feeling the benefits of it. Like, what was the conversations like? Like, man, I love this, or what was it like just so
Well,
people can kind of
so we
understand
were
that,
coming home. We were hiking. Yeah, we were hiking 15 or 18 miles a day. This started in the summer, so you got a lot of daylight.
right?
And we were coming home every night to our house and sleeping. And so she said, "Hey, if we can figure out a way to do this for most of the trail, I'll do it." And I said, "That's great. Let's do it." So just like her, like in 2 days, she came back with this giant spreadsheet that had, well, if we stay at this hotel, we can reach these three trailheads. And at the end of the day, after hiking together for a while, we actually did not enjoy that so much because I'm a little bit better going uphill. She's better going downhill. I like to stop and talk to people and take pictures. She likes to put her head down and hike. So we had a plan. If you can picture this, we would stay at a hotel over here.
Mm-hmm.
In the morning, we would drive two cars. We had two cars with us. We would drive to different ends of a trailhead. We would hike, have lunch, exchange keys, go back to our cars, and then
Wow.
drive back to the hotel. And that was perfect for us because if we were hiking together, I would go real fast up a hill and then I have to wait for her at the top. And then she got to the top and she'd hike real fast downhill and have to wait for me at the bottom. So we were experiencing the worst part of each's hike just to hike together. And
Right.
finally she was like, we don't, when you're hiking, you can't talk anyway, really. So anyway, we figured out a sort of a different way to do it. A few other people have done it that way, but most people that we met were like, "Oh, that's really cool." And this is so funny, especially the older wives are like, "Oh, I could do that. So I don't have to hang out with him all day." And then we're still married, you know?
I know, yeah. We have our habits, we have our routines, and they
Yeah,
don't always merge, but
right.
it's finding out how you can put them together. That seems like the most creative way to take two things, put them together to accomplish
Yeah,
what you wanted to
yeah.
accomplish.
So
So,
that's
would you say who was like who had the light bulb moment in that?
Peggy did.
Really?
And she has mostly in our relationship. When you get to the question about me moving back to Richmond, I'll tell you, those are the ones where she says something and I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. Let's go do it." And then 3 months later, I was like, "Wait a minute, you had a plan here the whole time." Right? It's
Uh,
like, okay. So anyway, yeah, it was pretty much Peggy. And then she was the one who scooped out. So we hiked uh I know you want to keep this a little bit short. We did the Appalachian Trail. We
yeah.
walked all the way from Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh, which is normally a
Okay.
bike route. Same thing, staying in hotels along the way. We did the full length of the Netherlands. There's a national trail there that follows the whole eastern coast of the Netherlands, in between the Netherlands and Germany. Peggy's been to the Camino, the pilgrimage, the
Yeah.
Saint, and
Yeah.
we're going to do. She did that with some of her college girlfriends. And in June, we're going to Norway and Sweden to hike for St. Olaf. It's another pilgrimage. I never even knew who St. Olaf was. But now we're more into like, we're going to do end to end hikes. We'd rather stop and spend the night at a hostel or something. We're not going to flex my muscles and say, "Man, I slept on the rocks every night just because I could."
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when you're hiking, are you listening to anything or are you just taking in nature?
Usually just taking in nature. Sometimes I listen to music. But one of the problems with that is I like to keep my phone available for the GPS, and if I'm listening to music, I mean, I bring battery chargers and stuff, so it's a technology thing. If I could have unlimited battery, I would probably listen to music a lot. But then
Hmm.
when you take your headphones off, you know, the quiet is really cool. And
Yeah.
the other thing is that if you don't hear hikers coming up behind you, it's kind of startling.
Yeah. Yeah. That
So
makes sense. Yeah. It's funny. I'm going to be pulling up the questions why I asked this.
okay,
When I never realized that I am like, I had a friend, he was on the podcast, and we were talking about different styles because he does a little of this personality, and my style is turtle. It's like I'm a methodical thinker, strategist, but it's not like you would say, and I kind of knew that, but it's not like you say, "Man, I'm proud to be a turtle," because you're slow. Turtles are slow, but they do. The idea. When I wake up, and we were talking about that. I'm perfectly silent for hours, and I just think, and then I journal, then I plan, and then I implement. But I got in a rhythm of that, and man, I love my quiet time. Like, I don't play music. I do it maybe once when I need that type, but most of the time it's completely silent. Okay,
All right.
so here's the first question. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. What's one thing about your life today that your 18-year-old self would be surprised or proud to know?
So the most surprising thing for me is that I'm back in Richmond at all. And I've been back now since 2004. But when we first moved back here, and that's a Peggy story, I'll tell you that. But when I left here in '75, you guys were great. I loved all you guys, but Richmond as a city, as far as I was concerned, wasn't really happening. I mean,
Mhm,
the reason we had such a big class of Ben was because of all the busing stuff. Racially, it wasn't great here.
mhm.
My older siblings were going to college and getting out of here. And so I just thought, man, I'm going to the Naval Academy. I'm going to join the Navy. I'm going to end up in San Diego or somewhere and never come back. So the fact that I'm back here was and still is a little bit of a surprise. But now, of course, I wouldn't give it up for the world, you know. But
Man, that is, that's why I went to Benedictine, because it was a busing thing. I
oh,
had been
right.
in private school before I came. I came in the middle of 8th grade, and I told my
Uh,
parents, "I wanna go to a public high school." And it goes, "Okay, yeah, if you wanna do that, that's fine." Then busing happened. It was like, "Okay, you're gonna go an hour across town," and go like, I don't like that." And
right.
then to say, because there wasn't any options, there was just a military high school, and they said, "Okay, what, military high school? I want freedom. I want to be able to just cut loose." Because when you're in private school, you just see a sliver of life. So you want something else. You want to kind of exercise your whatever and get out of that mindset. But you're right. I wouldn't have gone to Benedictine if it wasn't for busing. Yeah, that
Yeah.
that's interesting you say that, because I kind of forgot about it. All right, what's a lesson you've learned that you wish you could go back and share with your younger self?
So, and of course, my younger self probably wouldn't have listened to this, but my lesson would be think about things before you decide.
Hmm.
I can just remember doing so many things, and just by the grace of God, am I not dead or, smoked or ingested something that I didn't know what it was. I mean, to be honest with you. So, and part of that is so think about your decisions. Don't be a follower.
Hmm.
That's what I was. And again, luckily for me, most of the guys I followed were pretty, weren't gonna take me down the dark path. But don't be a follower and don't be awed by other people. You know, you you're a good person. You're a good kid. You're smart. Everybody has their positive attributes. And
Hmm.
and I never really focused on that. I wasn't negative on myself, but I never really focused on that to say, I don't have to follow this knucklehead because I'm smart enough to figure that out. And of course, now in hindsight, now that I've become a teacher and I'm learning this stuff, you know, especially for males, your brain's not developed till you're 24 or something. So I was making 18-year-old decisions, after I'd been in the Navy for 2 years. So that would be it. Think about your decisions. Don't be a follower. Don't be awed by other people.
Man, that is so good. I could say that definitely is me too. I followed and just made some stupid things, because you're
Yeah.
right. Well, I say 26, your brain is not fully
Oh, is that
developed.
right? Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but
Right.
I do know that your brain is not fully developed when we're making these decisions at 18, 19, and 20. That's for sure.
Right.
All
Right.
right. That is good. I love that. So, what path did you take after high school, and was it the one you expected to take?
Okay. So my path after high school was I went to the Naval Academy. So that's 4 years. Then after that, you're obligated for 5 years in the Navy. So I was in the Navy for 5 years after that. Um, and that really was not expected for me. I assumed I was going to go to Tech or Madison or UVA like everybody else. And I
Mhm.
just didn't really know what was going to happen. Um, Father Augustine, and his name comes up later, but Father Augustine just, he asked me, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to go to William and Mary or UVA or something. And he tossed the Naval Academy catalog in front of me and said, why don't you think about this? So that was beginning of my junior year. So after that, I'm kind of like, I think that'll be it. And it's interesting because I asked my dad. My dad was career Navy. My mom and dad were both in the Navy. That's where they
Mhm.
met in World War II.
Hmm.
Anyway, my dad was career Navy. And I said, Dad, why did you join the Navy? I was expecting a big patriotic speech. And he said, I wanted to get the hell out of La Feria, Texas. He was an only child on a avocado farm in Texas. And he was like, so anyway, that's, so I went to the Navy and I did that. And then I met Peggy at the Naval Academy. She was squared away. I was sliding, the Navy was fine, but I got out. So I resigned from the Navy, went back and got my MBA and became a certified public accountant, which if you'd have asked anybody in high school, they're like CPA and Andy, not even in the same picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, but being an auditor, certainly a junior auditor, it's all people skills. You're meeting people. You got to talk to the client. So it was great. And I was able to follow Peggy around in her career. So I was with Arthur Anderson when that was a good thing. And then I went with a smaller firm who eventually got bought by Anderson Young. So I did public accounting for a while. Then I was a financial executive with a couple different companies.
Mhm.
Then Peggy, after 9/11, we kind of freaked out and we said, we're going to move to our house in the country. So we moved out there. And then Peggy said, I thought I was going to retire, but I decided not to. But anyway, I stopped doing CPA stuff and I started substitute teaching and also being Mr. Mom with my kids because Peggy was traveling all the time. So
Mhm.
that part was totally, surprising to me. I just never thought I would do it, but I didn't have a full schedule. So I said, if I, sit around and go fishing all day, or I can go substitute teach. And all the
Yeah.
other teachers and the principals were all like, man, you look really natural with those kids. So then when we came back to Richmond, again, here's the plan with that Peggy had in mind, right?
Yeah.
Peggy's plan was, look, hey, I got orders to DC. She went to New Orleans for a year, which I did down there, which was great. Um, although one of my substitute jobs, the music teacher the religion teacher at the Catholic school broke her hip, and they said, we want you to sub for her. And I was like, teaching, you better talk to Father. No, don't talk to Father Adrian. Anyway, that was
Yeah.
my first long-term experience in the classroom. But anyway,
Yeah.
we came back here. Peggy's like, yeah, I don't feel like living in Washington. Let's buy a house in Richmond. And, a house is for sale right next to your parents on the same block, 3 doors down. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. Sure enough, within a year, my dad had passed. And probably the last 6 months of his life, it was, I don't know, given that I was here to help take care of him, and I wasn't working full time, so I was doing Mr. Mom for my kids because Peggy was driving DC every day, and then my dad dies. Eventually, my mom needs help, and Peggy already had all that in her mind. And then now, fast forward, my mom passed away. We sold that house, moved into this house. This is a house I grew up in on Monument Avenue. And it was
Wow.
renovated by the Benedictine Mafia. Noonan, general contractor, Keith Oley, electrician, Jeannie Bond's husband was the plumber, Mike Awad, bricks.
Yeah.
It's like,
I like that. The Benedictine Mafia. That is,
anyway,
I think it's really, having a network of relationships. I mean, you can go on out and search for somebody, but I always say tap into your network. These are
right.
people that know you, like you, and trust you, and those are the people that are going to take care of you. I wanted to go back when you said you took care of your dad. I have seen a lot of, our generation having to take care of their mom and dad at the latter years of their life. So what did you learn, like you got thrown into your dad. I think you said about 6 months.
Yeah.
What did you learn taking care of a parent that you didn't think you would when you did it?
Well, I guess I would say for me, you're for most people, I hope. I mean, some people don't have a good father figure in their life, but for me, my dad was like king. He was like, and I didn't think I learned that he was able to learn humility and say, okay, I'm not in charge anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If I fall out of bed at night, we're going to have to call Andy, and he's going to get up in the middle of the night and walk back to my house and help me get back in bed. He's going to help me do all the personal hygiene stuff, and I guess if that makes sense. So I learned watching other people learn humility. At some point, you need to give yourself up.
Yeah.
For some people, they give themselves up to God. I'm not quite that person, but at some point, you need to accept help when you need it. And so for me, it was interesting to see, and that did not diminish him at all. That was just another more fulfilling part of his life, that he could accept that we were there to help take care of him. And then same thing for my mom. My mom was around 6 or 7 years before she passed, but it's just interesting and the other thing about that was having my kids be involved. It was hard on them to see granddad die, but I'm a big family. I'm the only one of my 7 siblings whose kids lived next door, And for my son and my daughter, both of them, I'm like, Peggy and I are out doing something. You got to go put grandma to bed, or you got to spend the night at grandma's house because she's not feeling well. We want to make sure she's okay. For a 12-year-old kid, that's hard, but it's also reality. And I'm glad that we were able to show them that. They got the love from grandparents, but they also saw, the responsibility. And then when my dad died, we all gathered around, and my mom too, big family, they all came. Peggy and I looked at our kids. I have 2 children. Peggy and I looked at our kids. So when my dad was in intensive care, we were there. We had somebody there all the time. We kind of stood watch, just like the Navy. And they were like, "That's really good." And I was like, "Yeah, you guys are going to be on port and starboard because there's only 2 of you, 6 on, 6 off."
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, that it's my youngest has 2 now, 2 girls, and her oldest is 2. Well, let's see, her mother-in-law's mother, who was 87, was killed in a tragic car accident. And so I was talking to her through text after it happened, and she had said, like, I don't know if I can share with my 2-year-old the loss of her great grandmother. And I said, we learn younger in life that, hey, death is part of life. And if we don't give our kids an opportunity to go through the mourning, the loss, we deprive them of their growth. And so I said, just, you're the mom. She's not going to understand completely, but don't discount the fact that even our kids at any age, they understand it in their terms, but to put them in a position to experience the loss of a loved one helps them grow and understand it, not avoid it, which if we don't let them go through it, then they're always avoiding that thing. It's going to happen. We're not going to be around forever. So, all right, I want to ask you another one. So,
go ahead.
Who was someone from our school days who made a lasting impression on you, and why?
So for me, it was probably Father Augustine.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought he was smart. I really liked him because well, first of all, he was the one who introduced me to the Naval Academy, which I was like, that. But to me, out of all those, the priests there and the coaches, and he just always seemed to be level-headed. I rarely saw him lose his temper. He seemed to think things through, and even back then, he was telling me a couple times, be careful who you hang out with. And of course, I was like, you don't know what you're talking about, you old, priest. But anyway,
yeah,
when things got crazy, because if you think about it, man, some of the methods of the people there at that school, Nowadays, I mean, we laugh about him. We're like proud because we survived the fort. But
Yeah.
he was grounding for me. I could go to him and say, "Hey, this is crazy." Or when I did stupid stuff, I could go to him and he would not yell at me. He would say, "Let's just," he would talk me through it. And so anyway, Father Augustine probably was the best one there. I mean, my parents were always there, but in terms of at school, I think it was him.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure we could, and I'd love to do another at another time. But being a teacher, we don't realize the impact that we make on the students that are involved in our life until they come later in life and say, you know what you did? You said this. You put this in front of me. You encourage me to, do this. And it's like we don't see it until many, many years later when they come back and they like saying, "Hey, I didn't know what Andy would turn out. I just challenged him to do
Right,
something,
right,
you
right.
know, and he took the challenge." Yeah, yeah, that is so good. So, all right, let me think here. Okay. What's been one of the most meaningful or proudest moments of your life so far?
So I guess probably together meaningful and proud is how coming back to Richmond especially has gotten me more involved in family. So I've kind of really understood the importance of family. My
Mm,
parents, so I'm going both ways. I'm doing my parents on one end. I'm supporting Peggy because she's still working in DC and I'm trying to take care of the kids. So, being my kids, my daughter went to the Naval Academy also.
mhm.
She's a ship driver, the same kind of thing I was. Fortunately for me, making better decisions than I made back then. But anyway, I'm just so proud of my kids. And our son got into the Naval Academy, decided not to go, but we're so proud of him because he's thriving in other ways. He's doing his own thing. So I guess family being, the most meaningful thing for me now is family and friends also. But I really focus around my family. By buying this house from my mom, we've been able to keep my family together. There's
Ooh,
8 of us. We just
yeah.
got together. My oldest brother turned 70. So
Mhm.
no, 75. So that means we're getting old. We had everybody back here in Richmond. A bunch of them stayed at the house, so I would say family and children, on both sides, both being able to take care of my parents and then being here for my kids too. So
Ooh, that's so good. I was I'm in Rotary down here, and there's a judge who's in our Rotary, and we've talked numerous times, and we were talking about like we're helping to pour out to youth because it's so important to prepare our youth, maybe more than we definitely prepared ourselves. But what we were sharing with is our parents leave us a foundation. Now, sometimes the foundation may not be as solid, but they do have that influence in that foundation. But it's our other people, our other community that help our kids to grow and help us to grow. What can you tell right now, like with your, because obviously I can see with you and Peggy, there's a solid foundation built. How have your kids been able to be influenced in a way that have helped them grow to be better? Are there anybody like the Naval Academy? Just share with our viewers really the outside influence of our community that help our kids grow. And what could you identify now that would be helpful?
so I guess for our daughter who decided to go to the Naval Academy, she picked up right away how close our Naval Academy community was. So other than Benedictine, I mean, my Naval Academy classmates, she saw us always hanging out with them. Of course, Peggy was in the first class to graduate women from the Naval Academy. So as a girl, I think our daughter was like, I'm there, I'm going there. Um, so I think them seeing that and us
Mhm.
and us watching that. So we're super proud of that. And I guess for my son, he was really really smart, super smart kid. We even homeschooled him for a year because he was kind of getting bullied in middle school because he was so much smarter than everybody.
Hmm.
Um, and again, I'm super proud of him for having the guts to say, no, I'm not going to the Naval Academy because that's not really for me. We were devastated for a short while, but and then so Addie kind of really excelled following in her mom's footsteps. Corey did stuff that we had never did, throwing the discus, shot put, jazz saxophone. He was on the rowing team at William and Mary. Things that he just came up with on his own.
Hmm.
As a parent, sometimes you're kind of going, okay, good luck with that. And then he succeeds. And we're
Yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah.
so
That's so good. Thank you for that. All right. So what's kept you grounded or brought you joy over the years? Family, hobbies, passions that you could share with our viewers.
so I've talked a lot about family already. For me, I think it's been family.
Hmm.
Um, again, from two different, coming and taking care and living as an adult with my parents on the same block really taught me a lot about what they did for me. I kind of, you never really realize. And then as we had to take care of them, it's just, I guess I would say family number one, and then friends otherwise. For example, when my dad died, we had only been back in town a year, so I hadn't totally reconnected with everybody. But
Hmm.
we waking up the morning of the funeral, they're going to have the funeral mass and everything. And David Greg Nanny, who was not a classmate, but it's very close with me, he lives right down the street. He shows up with a tent, chairs, coolers, food for the backyard. You know, didn't ask him, and just like those guys are all here. When we had to redo this house, Noonan steps up. Like I said, all those guys. So family, but also friends. I mean, my kids, I'm just in awe of them all the time. But for me to be able to rely on and go back to family has been amazing. Sometimes I wish we didn't have. I wish we had. Sometimes I wish I had more than two kids. But I'm going to make the best of them, and
Yeah.
so family. I would say family first, and then friends. Coming back here, I did not realize the value of friendships until
Yeah.
I got back here.
Yeah.
Until I got
No, I totally connect with that. I mean, when I had my stroke, it was like, because I hung with Fred and Walt and Mike Natale, Roy. And so our like network, like Fred goes to Asheville, drives 4 hours down to Atlanta, has lunch and drives back like 8 hours in one day just for a lunch. And
yeah,
Walt and Mike, he's coming up from Tampa. Walt flies down just to hang out for a day,
uh,
and Roy was in town just coming up. Just those kind of like you said, when you don't see it until later, or you come into a situation where you appreciate so much the friends and what they do when you know relationships are so important. So yeah, I don't know. I was talking to Bobby and we were talking about our class and the number of people that are coming, and like I think the average was 15% of a high school 50th reunion will come back.
right.
And then it's a little bit higher for private school, but I don't remember the number, but it was we were much higher than
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
uh-huh,
there is that relationship that's so important. And, we wish that more people would come back. And, I'll ask you to kind of give your final pitch
right,
because we only have 1/50th, and those relationships are so important. We're only around, a limited number of years. So,
right,
know, to reconnect with people can be absolutely so fulfilling because we've gone on a 50-year journey. Now we're back to hanging out. We're a
right,
little
right.
wiser. Like
Yeah,
we talked about. We're making some. Better decisions.
right.
So our last question, because I want to be respectful of your time. So if you could sum up your journey so far in a few words or a short story, what would it be?
So I saw that question. That was a good question. I would guess, and I saw this in my parents. So I would say that some by design, some by default. I feel like my life has been a life of service. Okay. I
Mm,
joined the Navy. I served our country that way. Took a break being a CPA. I mean, I was making money then doing that sort of stuff. But then I came back. I've been a Boy Scout leader, Cub Scout leader, always been in the PTA, got back into teaching, so, and I saw that in my parents, and I'm trying to get my kids to think about that. It's all about giving back because so much was given to me. So I try and think that I've come back and a lot of that stuff. I wasn't thinking globally. I'm going to be a big service guy. Just like there was a need for the Cub Scout leader, so I'm going to step in and do that.
mm,
That's one of those things. I'm going to be the den leader for 1 year, and then 10 years later, I'm still doing. But now when I reflect on it, I say, that's what that's all about.
mm.
I probably could have made more money doing something else, but these things are just as important to us. And you first do it for your own kids, but working with the PTA or being a teacher and in scouts, man, kids are just have so much energy, and you know, doing that has made my life so much better. Sometimes after parent teacher conferences, I might not have said that, but I mean, basically everybody, I shouldn't say this, almost everybody wants to be great for their own kids. But to me, it's been good that I've been able to be of service to other families and other children, just, not just my own. So I would say service. That's what I'm glad that as it comes around, that's what I've ended up doing. So
And you'd fit into our Rotary down here like crazy. I'll tell you a quick story. So I was in Rotary 25 years ago, and it was kind of a white guys club. And I just like, I'm not real. I mean, I like it, but I am a white guy. So I mean, it wasn't that, but I didn't like the idea there wasn't diversity. So I dropped out, and then a person told me about it, and so I go to this Rotary, and it's like 100 people, and it is a cross section of the world. I mean, it is like 1,000% different. The energy, just the people serving, people doing, and but I'm getting ready to join you, have a breakfast with somebody, and there's a white guy. And I knew the other two, and one was two ladies. One served in when I was doing senior living podcasting. I knew her heart to serve. This other girl, I think, man, she's the future because she's a true servant. But this white guy, I mean, he reminds me of the old white guy. So if she didn't call right before, I wasn't going to join because it reminded me of a real closed, group of people. But this guy turned out to be the most incredible servant. I mean, he got awards for it. It was like, man, did I judge a book by its cover and miss that one? But she called me and I said, I don't think I'm going to join. It's just not the right time. And she kept probing and said, why? And I told her, I said, look, I'll tell you why. He reminds me of the old Rotary white guy, and I have no desire to do that. And she walked me through, like, I think you're just judging a book by its cover.
right,
She didn't
sure.
say that, but I was. But the servant heart, the serving of, we want to serve our family, but we also have a bigger area to serve if we
Right.
choose. So I want to ask you one more question. Now, this is for I'm big on the pitch. Like when you're an entrepreneur, if you're not pitching, you're not gonna be eating. So you have to learn. So I want you to give the most like picture people that are on the fence. They live in Richmond. They've told you no, and they've told a lot of people no. But why after listening to your podcast, why would you say it would be an important thing?
Yeah, I would say,
Important
um,
thing to reconnect.
okay, so I can think of two, I guess, um, I mean, it's hard for me to put in words, but I guess two things are going to happen. I think at least two things. You're going to see some of these guys that you haven't seen forever, and somebody's going to tell you something, and you're going to laugh like you haven't laughed in 5 years. And a good laugh like that is good for your soul. And you're just going to smile from ear to ear. And it might not even be the person, it might be the combination of a person and a story. And that's just gonna, it's just gonna be, I think that's gonna happen. And the other thing is that you're gonna see somebody that you have forgotten, and you're gonna realize that that person picked you up off the basketball court when you were hurting, or maybe you picked them up off the court and they're going to come to you and say, man, you probably don't remember, but Sergeant Eames was kicking my butt and you came in and said, hey, Sarge, you don't need to do, whatever. There's going to
Mhm.
be something that happened that you don't remember, and you're going to smile, you're going to laugh, you're maybe going to cry, you're going to have a twinkle in your eye when you see that person again. And I mean, it's just, and the other thing is that you're going to realize how you have done great things. And it's really cool to hear all the stuff that these guys have done. So don't, come by and see us, because it's going to be good. You're going to laugh. And if you have one big hearty laugh that weekend, that's going to last you for a couple months.
And I love it, man. That was so good, man. So yes, I can't even add to that because that was
Yeah.
really. I mean,
It's,
not only
it's cool.
heartfelt, but I think sometimes we got to hear that message, and we
Right.
have to realize, hey, life's short. If you can have a couple laughs with people that you spent some time with, and you can laugh, I mean, geez,
Yeah.
it's special. So I put it up on the screen while you were talking. So
Yeah.
somebody may see this on Facebook. They may see it, get email, whatever it is. How can they get a hold of you to get on the list and get involved and be at the reunion?
Yeah. So I have my email and my phone number up there. If you have questions about what's going on, you can call me. That's probably the easiest thing. Either call me or text me at that number, and then I'll give you more information. We're getting up close to the point of time where if you want to attend some of the paid events, we need to get money in, but there's still room for people, and the bank account's still open. So, and if you want to come and you can't afford it, let me know, because we've had a lot of classmates that have been generous with donations, and that's why we've been able to make most of it pretty affordable. So please reach out. We'd love to see everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. So I always close my podcast, and even though we're focusing on our classmates. What would be the one thing that you would want people to take home from our time on this podcast?
Um, I would say, uh, from this podcast, what this has done for me is it's made me go back and be appreciative of stuff that's happened in my past. Your questions are not difficult, but they did make me sit down. I even took notes. I'm like, it's good. The thing about this podcast is I think it's good every now and then to go back and reflect on what you've done and where you've been. You don't need to dwell on it, because we're all living in the present, but
Mm,
it's not too bad to go back. And that's the other thing that's good about a high school reunion is it gives you an opportunity, an excuse as it might be, to go back and relive, because I don't have time to deal with that stuff I did 50 years ago, but it's good for your soul, I think.
yes, that is well said. So, Andy, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We'll send you the podcast, and we're editing it, but we'll we'll send. I have it's live too, so we can immediately reach out to encourage people to,
Okay.
rearrange that schedule, like you said, and be there. We only have one 50th, so
Right. Right.
do what you can to get there and reconnect with your classmates. Thank you, Andy.
Okay.
Appreciate you being with us.
All right. All right, Pete. Thanks. Hey, when you cut off, Al,